Yeah.
Yeah, we ready?
Nearly, Chair, nearly. Oh, it's just... Right, it's streaming live now, Chair.
All right, thank you, Peter. Can I call this meeting in order? I'd like to welcome you to this meeting of Planning and Licensing Committee. I am the Chair, Councillor Shakil Ahmed. Before we start, could I ask the clerk to notify committee of any apologies received and to introduce the member of the committee and the officer who are in attendance?
Yes,
Peter?
Chair, but apologies from councillors Zahir, Amna Mir and Shah Wazir. Councillors in attendance are other than yourself, Chair, Councillors Burke, Councillor Susan Emmett, Councillor Rachel Massey, Councillor Faisal Rana, Councillor Asim Rashid, Councillor Peter Rush, Councillor John Taylor, Councillor Peter Winkler and Councillor Sean O'Neill. Officers in attendance are Emma Heron, Ryan Grant, Paul Moore from the Planning Service and Planning Solicitor Lorraine Adams.
Thank you, Peter. This meeting is being held via Zoom, and I should first advise members of the committee that this meeting will be streamed live on Council YouTube channel. Therefore, members need to be aware that any inappropriate language or comments will be picked up by broadcasting. Such comment could cause embarrassment to the member concerned and also to the council. When a member has finished speaking, please can they remember to press the mute button. A member of committee service team may do this for you if you fail to do so. Please, I ask the members to either turn off or mute their mobile phones now. This meeting is open to public, but it is not a public meeting. The following procedure will apply. I will introduce the application. The planning officer will provide an update if appropriate. The committee may question the planning officer, the objector, the application, or the representative may address the committee for maximum 5 minutes. Objectors are asked to nominate one or more person to represent. If more than one person is addressing the committee, the 5 minutes that you have allocated will be shared between you. The committee then questions the objector or the planning officer regarding the comments. The applicant or the representative may address the committee for maximum of 5 minutes. The committee then questions the applicant or the planning officer regarding the comments made. Any ward councillor may then address the committee, and I may permit question to the ward councillor or the planning officer regarding comments made. And members are reminded that they need to be present and visible during the consideration of a planning application. If a member goes off for a period of time during the consideration of an application, they will be not allowed on the application vote. The committee will then discuss the application and decision will be made. I will read out the proposal resolution before the committee. A vote on the decision will be conducted by means of roll call of the members present, which will be read out by the clerk. Each member will be asked if they wish to support, reject, or abstain regarding the proposal that has been voted. Okay, minutes of the last meeting. Uh, before we go, just make it clear, the last meeting we had, the one Soka village concerns. This make it clear this must remain as originally stated in the case officer report. I will ask Peter if just make it correct to the information that is.
Yes, we'll amend the minutes subject to the officer from the subject to the advice from the planning officer, Mr. Holmes, insofar as that the S106 agreement monies should be allocated to the Fairgrove ward. Fairgrove and Smallbridge Ward.
Okay, can somebody move the report?
Move it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So, declaration of interest. Any members? No. Urgent item business.
Not that I'm aware of, Chair.
Okay, submit of planning applications. Right, we're going up 5A 36 Norfolk Way. And I'm just going to read the application number. This application number is 20/00348 house. And it's in Norfolk Way, 36 Norfolk Way, Bamford Ward. Okay, any updates?
No updates, Chair. Just got a presentation to make.
Right, okay. All you two.
Okay, can let me know when you can see that presentation.
Yeah, I can see you now.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
There you go.
So the application is a resubmission of an application determined by members on the 6th of August and is for front and rear extensions on a property on Norfolk Way in Bamford. Members resolved to grant permission for the previous scheme for front and rear extensions on this property outlined in red here, but subject to the removal of Juliet balconies from the rear of the scheme. An amended plan was duly submitted and planning permission was granted. The proposal before members today is for the exact same scheme considered previously, including the Juliet balconies on the rear elevation. This means that the the recent approval carries considerable weight, and the primary consideration for members today is whether you consider the Juliet balconies to be acceptable, having regard to visual amenity and impact on neighbouring properties. Officers recommended approval previously and do so again with this application. Officers take the view that the Juliet balconies are acceptable. They do not allow occupants to sit out externally, and the windows are sited obliquely to the rear of the neighbour's garden. So for completeness, this is the rest of the scheme applied for. This is the front elevation as per the previous scheme, incorporating the contemporary additions, which are primarily to the front and rear, and that's the side elevation. And this is the proposed site plan showing the extension position relative to the original house here and the neighbouring properties here. So number 34 and 38 Norfolk Way here. This is the position of the extension. So the Juliet balconies would be along this positioned in this wall here at first floor level. Excuse me, sorry. Just to go through a series of photographs for you, because I'm aware members won't have had the opportunity to go out on site here. This is the extension from the neighbouring garden. So this is the neighbour's bungalow and their garden, and this is the extension here. This is a photograph submitted by the neighbour showing by the boundary looking towards the extension. And this is one from the application site itself, from the rear of the garden, looking back towards the neighbours, so you can see the difference in ground levels there. And this is the extension as currently constructed. So just finally, this is the original front elevation from Norfolk Way, and this is the front extension under construction. So in summary, officers are of the view that the scheme is acceptable in its current form, and the recommendation is as per the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Emma. Anyone have a question for the officer? Peter Rush.
Yeah, thank you. You say the balcony won't be used. Did I get that right?
No, it's not possible to sit out. It's not a balcony as such. It's the door. The windows can be opened in full, but there's a balustrade immediately at the wall face to stop any. So you couldn't physically sit out from beyond the wall face.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Anybody else? Councillor Fesseron.
From one of the picture, I think it's evident that the openings for the balconies have already been made. Can you clarify this, please, that if the openings are already there?
That does look to be the case from the officer's site visit, yeah.
Right, so that means the openings have been made even before the passing the planning permission, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Right, so we've got a big issue there, isn't it?
Sorry, Chair. I'm here on behalf of the applicant in support of the application. I'm not sure when the appropriate time is to.
No, I will invite you when it's your
Sorry.
term comes.
Okay,
Thank
fine.
you. Any other councillor has a question for our officer? Okay, before we move on, I just remind everybody that you cannot put anything on your chat box, especially on this committee. You can ask for comment or question. That's the only two things you are allowed on this chat box. There's no other comments allowed. Is there any objectors here apart from?
Yes, I'm here.
Lewis, could you put your video on first, please?
I think it's already on.
No, it's not.
Oh, right. Okay.
It's come out under
There we
different
go.
name. You
Is
come
that
out
right?
under different name now, Nigel Longshaw there.
No, video's working now, Chair. I can see it.
Thank
Right, okay, that's fine. You got 5 minutes to present your
For me
objection.
now.
Yeah,
Thank
Yeah.
you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee for giving me the opportunity to once again describe the impact of the building works next door on our lives. Nothing, I believe, has changed regarding the planning regulations since this committee decided to refuse permission for Juliet balconies and windows in August of last year. Yet here we are again, having to consider yet another attempt to overturn the decision of this committee. To remind you, this is an extremely large 2-storey house uphill from our bungalow, and you have some photos demonstrating this. I have got some that clearly show how overlooked we are, not just by the balcony windows at the top, but by the bifolding doors at the bottom. Mr. Ahmed tells us, when we recently asked if we could resolve this amicably, that he wishes bigger windows and balconies because this would be aesthetically pleasing. He will hardly be able to see these windows from his garden because the garden has been shortened to such an extent that he will struggle to see them. We, however, are overlooked through the bifolding doors downstairs and the upstairs windows and elevated gardens. As you've already noted this evening, Mr. Ahmed had cut those windows prior to the August meeting, and then after the decision, he said he would make them smaller. That clearly hasn't happened. You've seen from the recent pictures. And it does make us ask, does he have any intention of following the rules? And how many times will he keep putting in requests until you and perhaps we just give in? I just don't understand how many times can this happen. You've already ruled on this thing about the balcony windows and refused that permission. In the application, it states that the houses on Northwood Way each have a different appearance. That was indeed the attraction of Northwood Way, but now the houses are all beginning to look the same. Indeed, if you look opposite our house to the changes being made, it's almost identical to next door. The application says we are slightly lower. I would contest this and say it is a significant difference in height. And this again, with the property going so far back, it goes back into the garden and it impacts us so much more. The front is not a problem. The house is so close to us now, manifest by the work that has been done recently that has damaged the roof of our house on 2 separate occasions. Finally, I will try and just show you some pictures we've taken, but I would like to thank you for allowing me to speak tonight to plead our case. Our balcony windows, which only look out onto our garden, more important than the privacy of what we believe, having lived here for over 20 years, is an important outdoor space that brings us so much pleasure. I would just ask that you uphold your previous decisions, and that shows how overlooked we are. And again, just here, how big this is over our house from the original white house that was there before. So all I can say is that we suggest that you really think, as you did in August, and go with your thoughts in August. And I'm just grateful for this choice, this chance to speak to you tonight. Thank you.
thank you. Anybody has a question for objector? No. Thank you, Louis Foreman.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Is applicant here, please?
The agent for the applicants here, Chair, Kathy Bibby.
Right, Kathy Bibby, you got 5 minutes starting now.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant, Mr. Ahmed, in support of his planning application for extensions to an existing house. This house has already seen an application approved last year in August for front and rear 1 and 2 story extensions, but without the Juliet balconies element. So, I mean, I understand that at the time it was previously approved, but with the Juliet balconies taken out, obviously removed from the scheme. So if I can emphasise, the main elements of the application were approved at committee. I appreciate at the time if they were an issue. In support of the application, if I can just highlight the following: these Juliet balconies are not an external balcony, but merely a replacement for the rear bedroom windows. They open inwards, so they do not allow the applicant to step outside of the property. They're effectively replacing the window. So in terms of the views that it will allow, it's very much the same as the existing approved windows, and therefore the privacy and overlooking of the neighbouring properties is not considered to be impacted. The case officer in her report supports this view. She's fully assessed this, and under paragraph 9 agrees that the Juliet balconies would not, the overlooking would not be significantly increased as a result of the application. And would be similar to an ordinary window, as there's no opportunity for sitting externally. Windows would be sited to the bleak angle from the rear garden, and in terms of the rear garden, number 38, it's angled away, so wouldn't be overlooked by the Juliet balcony at all. So the application does comply with policy DM1 and the council's SPD. I do note there's an objection on the basis of drainage. There's conditions attached which relate to the need to submit details on soft and hard landscaping, which will reduce any risk of surface water flooding. So just to summarise, by setting out this application for extensions was approved to committee in August, with the exception of the Juliet balconies being the only element that differs. The application has been thoroughly assessed, taking into account all objections received, and should rightly be welcomed, as we can see this in supporting the recommendation in the report to this committee. I would ask that the application is supported this evening.
You still got a few minutes if you want to add anything.
No, that's fine. Just if anyone's got any questions, to say the application does focus on the Juliet balconies.
Okay. Any question for the applicant? No, I think this application was discussed in detail last time, so I think everybody knows. I've got a ward councillor here, I think. Pat Sullivan,
yes,
you want to speak on it? Yeah, okay.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm really sorry this has come back again. I didn't expect it to, because I thought it was a very good compromise from what is going to be a very overbearing building on this bungalow next to it. This applicant does have a habit, I believe, I understand, of coming back and back and back until he thinks he'll get what he wants. And I think this is not very respectful to this committee, who've already decided. It was quite a long discussion on why this minimal request could be granted to save these people any more aggravation. The building that's been built is higher. It probably says something like not unduly higher or slightly higher. It's quite a lot higher. The land has been built up, so the building looks even bigger than if it was the same level as the bungalow. And I really find it not very nice when they set the planning officer says things like it would not adversely affect impact on the neighbours, and things like it's not unduly overbearing, which means, in other words, it is overbearing, but as the planning officer doesn't have to live there, it doesn't seem to her unduly overbearing. In fact, it said on page 8 that it is visually prominent, and it's what they're saying is the street scene will be quite attractive. So if you're strolling past and you look up and you think, oh, this is a very nice street with lovely houses. But if you're living behind it, they don't living at, you know, your gardens at the back, and you've got this impact of this massive building. And on top of that, the whole back will open practically because they've got bifold doors at the bottom. And then I'm sick of people saying you can't sit with the Juliet. The reason they put Juliet balconies on is so you can fully open the full-size windows and put your chair or your table or whatever there, right on the edge of the building, overlooking. That's why the Juliet balconies are there, not just aesthetic, which is ridiculous. You put to make something look prettier and more beautiful, you put wrought iron balconies outside at the back of a house, which can only be seen by the people next door, who have to put up with people overlooking them. It is just not acceptable to come back with this when the committee have already decided that Mr. and Mrs. Foreman were not having not being able to privately sit in their own garden anymore. They also say things like it's that they might have a perception of being overlooked. How can you have a perception of being overlooked? Someone's either looking at you or they're not. And in this case, they will be looking straight over their garden into where they sit. They can open those doors because they've got a balcony. No, I don't care how close it is to the wall. In front of the windows, they can open them wide. The children can stand there safely. They can sit there safely. You can't do that with normal windows. The committee decided that they should not have these Juliet balconies, and I would respectfully ask this committee to stick to what they've decided. Nothing's changed. The officer says it's just a repeat of what was done before. So why are we just having a repeat of what was done before? What is the point of getting this item on this agenda, time consuming, just to repeat what was said, hoping to break down the resistance? It just is not the way to play cricket. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Anybody has a question for a ward councillor? No, thank you. It's open to discussion now. Councillor Asim Rashid. Anybody else?
Councillor Rana.
Councillor Rana, Chair.
Yeah, Councillor Rana. Anyone else? Peter Winkler. Asim Rashid.
Thanks, Chair. Actually, I'm surprised why this application has come back to committee. The problem is when officers has a delegated powers, and this is according to the planning rules, and there is no issues with the planning officers, because our first advice contact is planning officers. And if planning officers is giving a grant permission, there shouldn't be any problem. I'm sorry, Councillor Pat Sullivan, I have to go against your theory, but I think both your ward residents and you're giving favor to one and just going against one. When planning officers is giving advice that this is according to planning rules, why we're discussing this matter in committee. And I think if planning officers are satisfied and there shouldn't be any issue according to planning rules, we should grant this permission according to the planning officer's advice. And I'll recommend for recommendation for this application.
Thank you. That's Asim Rashid. Councillor Faisal Rana.
Yeah, I think I've got a big problem with this application. I think when you look at the pictures, the openings have already been made. The work has already been started on the Juliet balconies, and the permission is the application is coming in now. Should it be a breach of planning permission, the original planning permission? Should it be a retrospective planning permission we should be discussing? I'm really confused here, Chair. Another thing is that last application we made a decision as a committee here, and we made a decision, yeah, that we are not going to allow the Juliet balconies based on few facts there. The application is the same. Nothing has come through as a new. So what should I, discuss, or what should I look into to reverse my judgment did I make the wrong decision on the original application when I voted for removal of the Juliet balconies, or am I going to reverse my decision based on the no new evidence? So it's a dilemma, really. Either I made a wrong decision on the previous application, and then I'm just going to reverse my decision based on no information whatsoever. Chair, I think this is a serious application, and we need to look into these details. And I think the applicant is not willing to sacrifice, and I say, or maybe willing to make compromise with the residents. I think we need to really look into this broader perspective really here, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Rana. That's illegal. They have a right to put application in. You can't stop any application. Just make you correct on that. Councillor Peter Winkler.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose first of all, I agree with Councillor Rana. This is a decision that has come before planning. It's not come a long time ago. It's come very recently. A decision has been made by the committee. It's come back again tonight without any amendment whatsoever. I do think it's somewhat insulting to the committee that it's brought back so quickly without any amendment to it. We've made a decision, and I really can't see how as a committee we can just reverse a decision without any obvious reason to do so. On another point, Chair, I want to raise a question with the comment that Juliet balconies are no different to a window. You know, of course they are. They're much bigger. They've got the railings on there. They're designed that you can lean out of them, hang things off them, whether you know drying your washing or hanging a towel out on them. They're very different to a window, Chair. That's I just can't accept that there's no difference. But you know, my main point is that this has been decided by the committee. Councillor Rana's quite correct.
Thank you. John Taylor, then I go Assam Rashid again.
Thanks, Chair.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. It's just a question of clarification, really. Councillor Rana pointed out the Juliet balconies have been constructed, but the whole building has been constructed. Has planning permission been granted once already in order for the building to be constructed?
You want to come in, Emma, on that?
Yeah, that's right. So members granted approval for the scheme as a whole, but without the Juliet balconies. So they are in effect building what they've got planning permission for.
Okay. Next, got Councillor Assam Rashid.
Well, Chair, I've already given my verdict, but the second, I just want to record my protest against Councillor Peter Winkler's words insulting the committee. This is absolutely not acceptable, because this word he should take back. We're not insulting the committee. This is a right for everybody to bring the application into committee and discuss. So he is not insulting to officers, or he's not insulting the elected members. And that's very harsh word he used. So he should take this word back.
That's something the legal will look into the way. Anybody else want to speak? Thank you, Aaron Davison, for joining. Did you have a problem with the password? I think that's
yes, Chair. I really do apologise. I've tried, but I finally got through thanks to Peter.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Chair, I think Irene is not voting on this matter because she joined.
Yeah, she's late. That's fine. So the recommendation is for approval application area. So the committee need to propose either way.
Councillor Ahmed, can I just make a comment? It's just a general comment, because I'm aware obviously that members have commented on the fact that the matter was before them before. I would just make the point that the application that has come forward has got Juliet balconies on it. Now, obviously, the officers have recommended approval for that. Members do need to make a decision on that application with the Juliet balconies. Now, they can either go with the officer recommendation, or clearly they can put forward their own recommendation to refuse it with planning reasons, but they do have to determine the application with the Juliet balconies on. So I just wanted to make that point just for clarity.
Thank you, Lauren. So, okay, either way,
Chair.
go on. Rachel, did you want to come in?
Chair, if I
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question then for Lorraine. If we previously refused it because of the Juliet balconies, and this time we have to give a planning decision with regards to being against this time, what exactly, can we give the previous planning decision, or are we looking for a new planning decision?
So, sorry, Councillor Massey, my understanding on the last application was you approved it, but a condition was put on that the windows, I think, that were previously approved would go on instead of the Juliet balcony. I know there was discussion at that meeting, and I was at that meeting, but what I'm trying to make clear now, and maybe didn't, and members have heard this many a time, is that we need to determine, you need to determine the application before you. So, Councillor Massey, in answer to your question, if you don't think the development is acceptable with Juliet balconies, you need to recommend refusal with a planning reason why not. Before, what you did was you didn't refuse the scheme, you approved the scheme, but you replaced the Juliet balconies with the windows. I think that that really we need to look at what has been put forward, the design and the plans, which are for the Juliet balcony, and it's that needs to be determined this evening.
Thank you, Lauren. Did you, Peter Winkler, did you want to come in? Of course.
If I can, please, Chair, just I want to clarify that last point with the officer, if I can. If we refuse the application tonight, does that refuse the entire application, including the front and rear extensions, so that the whole development is no longer valid? Does that override the previous planning application?
Well, no, it won't. The previous planning application, as I understand it, has been issued. So that previous planning application with the windows has been issued, and indeed Emma was saying they've already commenced development on that. This would give them a new planning decision, which would allow them to have Juliet balconies. Now, obviously, if members refuse this evening, then it'd be open to the applicant to appeal should they wish to. Well, he could, or he could appeal this decision. It's obviously would be up to him.
Right. Thank you, Jay. It was just to clarify that although we're voting on the whole application, the only point at which it would differ would be the Juliet balcony. We wouldn't be voiding a previous application.
Yeah, I haven't I've not looked at the applications, but as far as I'm aware, that is the case.
Thank you.
I'm sure Emma can confirm.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
Peter Winkler, Councillor Fasarana, and then Asim Rashid.
The question for the planning officer. Can the planning officer please confirm that the applicant is already in breach of planning condition or otherwise? Can the officer please confirm this?
In terms of what they've constructed, so the openings at first floor level are large enough for Juliet balconies, but it would be a very small task to put blocks in to create the windows that they've got planning permission for. So I'd wonder whether it would be something that we would look at taking enforcement action, because it is easily resolvable to implement the approved scheme.
But in other words, can you please confirm if it's a breach or not?
Technically, at the moment, yes, it is. Yeah, because they don't have planning permission for those apertures.
Thank you.
Okay. Cool. Asim Rashid.
I just want to clarify, Councillor Rachel Massey. This application was previously approved and subject to grant permission from committee by officers. So it means if we approve this one, we don't need any planning reason. But if it's been refused by some reason, there should be some planning reason. So am I right, Chair?
Yeah, that's right. The application as it stands tonight is a recommended approval. There's no reason to, if anybody want to propose a refusal, you got to give a good reason. So the case, if the case does go to the appeal, and then we able to defend the appeal.
So I've already proposed for grant permission for this application. If anybody seconded.
Okay, Asim Rashid proposed for, okay. Phil Burke, did you want to come in?
Cheers, thanks, Chair. I think we've got to be very careful here because of what Councillor Rana said about a breach. It's clearly a breach of planning on this application. We sent this applicant away last year to design and re-look at the windows. He's clearly not listened to us, and now he's breached the planning conditions. Now, if we was to allow this to go through, then it sends a message out to people, oh, well, I breached it, what about you? I think if we're going to refuse it, we need to look at loss of privacy, out of character with the area, and the overall effects it's going to have on immediate residents either side of the property. So I would recommend for refusal based on the breach of planning.
And I would second that, Chair.
So, sorry, Councillor Ahmed, can I just come in?
Yeah.
The reasons that Councillor Burke's put forward for refusal in terms of out of keeping with the area, etc., are acceptable, but I don't think that we can say because of a breach of planning, we can refuse it. That wouldn't seem to me to be quite the correct approach. The fact is the applicant has put an application in. He requesting the Juliet balconies, accepting Emma's point. Currently, what's in is unacceptable, but very easily amended if he wanted to change them to windows. But regardless, the breaches of planning are dealt with separately by the enforcement team, and it would be for them to look at that breach of planning. But this evening, the job is to consider the application before you and whether it is acceptable in planning and policy terms. If you don't believe it is and you've got good reason to refuse it, then obviously that's up to members to do. If you think it is, then obviously you vote with the officer recommendation. I just wanted just to clarify that point.
Thank you. Phil Burke, did you want to speak?
Yeah, Chair, can I come back? Then in that case, it'd be loss of privacy, overbearing to the residents immediate side of them, and it's out of character for the little street it's on.
Okay, Peter Rush.
You mute, Peter.
Mute yourself.
Not having as would that stand up? Would that stand up as a genuine point of planning, or would it be a position where it could be totally against a good planning reason from this point of view?
That's the only planning officer can give us on that.
Yeah, it's a sound planning reason to refuse an application, Councillor Rush.
I agree.
It's a material consideration.
But it has to be on the grounds of the planning application.
Sorry, Chair, it's valid, and I've said I'll second it. So do we not move to a vote, Chair?
It's okay, Peter Winkler, that the people want to speak. I'm chairing committee, yeah? That's been proposed by amendment been proposed, Phil Burke, and second by Peter Winkler, on proposal to refuse this application as it stands. So the reason given as the following, can you repeat them reasons so they can go in the minutes, Phil Burke?
Yeah, it's the total loss of privacy, the out of character for the area, and the overbearingness of the immediate properties.
Okay. Peter, can you take the vote, please?
Right, Chair, you're voting. The proposal is to refuse the application. Councillor Burke?
Refused.
Councillor Susan Emmett?
Refuse.
Councillor Massey?
Refuse.
Councillor Rana?
Refused.
Councillor Rashid? You're on mute.
We should recommend this application.
So you'd like to see it approved, right? Okay.
Yep.
Councillor Rush? Councillor Rush?
Peter Rush?
Abstain.
Councillor Taylor?
Refuse.
Councillor Winkler?
Refuse.
Councillor O'Neill?
Refuse.
And Councillor Ahmed, Chair?
Abstain. So the application has been refused as a ground, as a reason already as given. Okay. Thank you. Let's move on to next application.
You can leave, Louise.
If anybody wants to leave, they can leave now. Next application is 5B, is on page 17 to 39. Application number is as follow. Is in Littleborough Ward. I'm gonna find the number. It's 20/00764 full, and it's Township Lakes, Lakeside, Littleborough Ward. Okay. Emma, any updates on that, please?
That's sir. It'll be me dealing with this one. I've got a presentation to give.
Right. Okay, Ryan, it's all to you. Ryan
Yeah.
Grant.
Just let me know when you can see my screen.
No, I can see you now. Thanks.
Yep, that's great. So the application is for a change of use from a care home to a single detached dwelling with an associated building and demolition works, demolition of the existing bungalow and construction of 6 new detached dwellings with associated servicing and external works. It's actually a resubmission of a previously refused application, which was refused under delegated powers, albeit changes have now been made since that previous application. Moving on to the second slide, if you can see that, this is just to show site context. So it lies to the northeast of Littleborough. On the next slide, you should be able to see the current extent of buildings on site, along with the access road. The brown shading denotes the areas which will actually be demolished, as stated in the description. This is a historic site photo. So it is a locally listed building constructed in 1873 in a Gothic style. The house sits relatively centrally in the site, surrounded by the grounds. However, there's been quite a number of 1980s and 1990s extensions, which were associated with the previous care home use, and they were marked for demolition on plan in the previous slide. And this image shows some of the extent from the front of the site. So you can see how it's eroded the historic significance and quality of the site. Some more site photos just for further context, showing the extent of the new build elements on the site, or the extensions, and how they detract from the current setting. The bottom left image also in particular shows some of the antisocial behavior, including theft and vandalism, that has unfortunately happened in recent years on the site since it's been left vacant. The main household itself still contains quite a few very impressive historic features which lend historic significance to its protection. And these are currently being protected by an on-site guardian who's there 24/7. But obviously the risk would be that leaving the house vacant for any length of time could risk deterioration of some of these features, which we would like to protect as officers. The site has quite an extensive planning history. The two most relevant applications are one which was approved in 2017 for a similar proposal, which saw the main house split into 3 flats, but accompanied by 5 new houses. And you'll be able to see that on this screen on the left. Apologies, it's all the only plan we have is in black and white, but as you can see, the layout of the site is roughly the same as what's now proposed on the right. However, plot 1, which lies just to the southwest, immediately adjacent to the heritage asset, was not proposed in the original scheme. So the total number of units in the original scheme was 8. However, there was actually less buildings because the main building was going to be split into flats. The second, later application, which is relevant, is the refused application from last year. That was a similar layout and scale as what's proposed in the application for you now. However, it was refused on a number of grounds, which included technical matters of highways, drainage and ecology, along with other concerns over the quality of the design and the impact on the heritage asset, which as a whole failed to demonstrate the very special circumstances which are required in this case due to the site's location in Greenbelt. Through the course of the application process, officers have worked with the applicant to address all of the technical matters which were previously reasons for refusal. So you'll see in the report that all technical consultees have no objections to the scheme subject to the planning conditions which have been listed. Beyond the technical matters, the key test also for this proposal in planning policy terms is the ability to demonstrate very special circumstances which clearly outweigh the harm to Greenbelt and any other harm. So as covered in my report, the key considerations in this case for very special circumstances are the protection and enhancement of a locally listed building and the provision of high quality large family housing. So the substantial restoration works, which will be secured through a Section 106 agreement to the main house, would amplify its historic significance and protect it for future years, and would include phasing and delivery plan to ensure that that is the case. The applicant has also worked closely with officers during this application to quite significantly improve upon the new housing elements of the scheme, and they now offer a high quality bespoke units which are contemporary in nature but respond positively to the heritage asset. And as such, the new housing now has the support of the council's conservation officer, whereas before that was also a reason for refusal. And I can actually show you an image of some of the new housing styles which pay respect to the heritage asset in terms of their materiality, their fenestration, and the overall quality of materials selected throughout, and that extends to the boundary treatments and the access arrangements as well now. Whilst the applicant has failed to provide any viability report to demonstrate the need for exact number of new units, it is accepted as through the previous permission there is some need, albeit it's unquantified in this case, for additional houses to support the restoration works to Honorsfeld. In this case, it's considered that other material considerations can still be given significant weight, despite the unfortunate absence of supporting viability information. My report also sets out an assessment of the proposal's impact upon the Greenbelt. In this case, it's found to be relatively limited due to the well-contained nature of the site. And going back to the slide, you can see the extensive vegetation on site, which means that it's well enclosed. The site is also largely previously developed due to the previous extensions and external buildings, which took up quite a significant extent of the site, including those closest to the remainder of the Greenbelt in the area. As such, the impact on the Greenbelt overall was relatively limited, and that included its visual impacts. Whilst it's been noted that whilst it's noted in the report that there's some residential separation distances which have not been met per our SPD, the SPD is flexible on a case-by-case basis, and all of the instances in this case are minor in nature, and in each case they've been mitigated by other factors of the site constraints and the development layout, which have worked to its advantage. My reports concluded that the significant benefit of the restoration works to a locally listed building, along with the provision of high quality new homes, outweighs any harm to the Greenbelt and any other harm, thus passing the test of demonstrating very special circumstances. As such, I'm asking members are recommended to approve the application subject to the planning conditions and completion of the Section 106 legal agreement as is set out in your report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ryan Grant, for your report. If you're able to remove your screen. Yeah. Anybody has a question for the officer? I've got John Taylor. Anyone else? No. I welcome Councillor Zaman. You're just in time to join this meeting. You'll be able to allow to vote on this applicant. Just remind you.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, there was some problem with the internet.
Yeah, everybody's having that issue. Thank you. John Taylor.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Ryan, for the presentation. The only question I've got around your presentation is about the lack of a feasibility study. We've been asked to consider upgrading the house and putting 6 extra houses there. And the question is, well, I don't know whether in terms of feasibility and affordability, etc., 4 would have been sufficient to build on the Greenbelt or 5. I wonder why it's 6.
Yeah, so just coming back through, Chair. In response to that question, it was requested from the applicant that a viability report was provided for exactly that reason. Because ideally in this suggestion, you'd want the minimum amount of development to facilitate the works required for the restoration works. In this case, it wasn't provided, and so officers had to basically respond based on what information we had to hand, and also take into consideration the previous planning history, which had accepted a total of 8 dwellings, albeit it had been split with some flats and fewer new buildings. So it was accepted that there was some level of case there, but that it was unquantified in this case. And so the decision that's then taken, or the recommendation that's then been taken, has been based on other considerations which have been given greater weight, because unfortunately we can't provide full weight to a viability case because we don't have any information and numbers in front of us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? No. Peter Rush. When you mute yourself, Peter. Can't hear you, Peter. That's it. Go on.
Yeah, sorry about that. This is another one that's been before us before, and I will recognise it. How many bungalows were there before on site?
There's no bungalow. There was application this before historically, long time ago.
Yeah.
But it's not the bungalows. It probably added 8 dowling then. But that was quite back long time ago, I think. That's
yeah. How many houses was there?
Chair, if it would help, I can bring up the previous scheme slide again on screen if it would help. But in effect, there was 5 new houses in the grounds as opposed to the 6 that's now proposed.
Originally 5, now there's 5 again, yeah?
There's 6 now.
6, right, okay.
Sorry, Ryan, as you know, go back, there's a history to back to it as well further down, before previous to 5.
Oh, yeah, yes, there might have been additional applications previously.
Yeah, that's a long time ago. I got Phil Burke. Have you got a question, Phil Burke?
It's just a comment to Ryan. Thanks for the presentation, Ryan. It was an in-depth, straight to the point, and very precise in what they want to do. It's well received, the presentation from you, Ryan.
Thank you. Any objectors here?
No objectors here tonight, Chair.
Okay. Is applicant here?
Yes, Mr. Longshaw's here, I believe, or the agent for the applicant, Mr. Longshaw.
No, Nigel Longshaw?
Yeah.
You're welcome to the committee. You got 5 minutes, starting now.
Sorry, just having a bit of trouble with the screen.
Can hear you. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak. We're going to keep this relatively brief. We've been involved with this site since 2016. First of all, we'd like to thank the planning officers, the consultees and everyone involved for their support and patience in dealing with this current application and bringing this proposal to a point at which a recommendation for approval has been made. In this regard, and in light of Ryan's report, we don't feel we can add a great deal to the outline and detail contained in the planning officer's report. However, we're willing to try and answer any questions the committee members might have in relation to this proposal. Thank you.
Okay. Any members has a question for the applicant? I've got John Taylor. Anybody else? Councillor John Taylor.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Mr. Longshaw, for your presentation. Can I say thank you for bringing this, because I would really like to see that house brought back into use and the grounds as well. There's just one issue in my mind at the moment, and that's around the feasibility of how many houses are needed in the grounds to make it a viable prospect for yourself. And that seems to be missing. Could you give us an update on about what the situation is, please?
Well, I think that the situation as we saw it was that the previous approval was for in total 8 dwellings. The current proposal is for 7 dwellings, which is a reduction.
6.
Sorry?
6, isn't it?
7 dwellings in total, 6 new ones and the existing house converted back to its original state. The returns on converting the house to a single property are obviously less than having it converted into 3 properties. And for that reason, we felt that as the original consent was approved for 8, that and that was required to bring the site back to use, that the current proposal for 7 dwellings would be acceptable to the council in terms of the revenue that's required to bring the existing house back into its former use.
And have you done your own work around the feasibility? Do you know how many extra houses you would need to build in order to make it profitable for you?
We were involved with the original submission. We didn't do the feasibility study on that. The original planning consultant did that. So we haven't done anything in relation to this.
Can't hear you, Nigel. Are we having issue with the internet, Nigel?
Yeah, it's just cut out.
Right, okay, now. If you could repeat again what you said before, then we'll pick it up.
Yeah, basically the original consent was for 8 dwellings in total. This application is 7 dwellings in total. The converts it back to 1 dwelling. So
we're having issue here, internet, I think. John Taylor, did you get that?
Yeah. Chair?
Yeah.
My understanding from what I could hear is there was previous planning permission for 8 dwellings, of which 3 were in the original house and 5 new ones. This is now upgrade the house as 1 dwelling and build 6 new ones. But we don't have a feasibility study around the requirements. If that's what I picked up from the conversation.
Yeah, that's what we did as well. But Nigel, if she help you to switch off camera, and it'd be better for can we hear it? Anybody else has a question before we do that? No, I don't think anybody has a question. Thank you, Nigel.
Thank you
for attending this meeting.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. There's no. We've got ward councillor here, Janet. Janet Emsley wants to speak. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just to reflect on some of the things that's already been said by Planning Officer and by Nigel there. This is a development of a site which has got historic interest, and we as a Pennines Township agreed that the house itself should become a locally listed building. It was the only way that we could see at one point to actually save it from further falling into disrepair and future development. So yes, you're right, John. The 8 dwellings were 5 dwellings plus 3 flats, which were kind of incorporated in the old building, and now it's 7 dwellings, i.e. the original house, which means that the integrity of the house will be kept with this planning application, whereas it wasn't necessarily previously, because the 3 flats didn't didn't take the nature of the building into consideration in a sympathetic way. Just to say that it's also been supported by residents around and neighbours who of their own volition got a petition together to support the development. And the restoration, as is stated in the report, is appropriate development in the green belt because the various reasons that have already been given. The request from Highways and the Conservation Officer's comments have been taken into consideration by the applicant now, and we've seen a definite move in the direction of getting a plan that will satisfy all those requirements. So I'd like to thank the planning officer and the applicant for working together to bring the application to the committee, and I ask that the recommendations be accepted and fully supported if that's possible. Obviously you will take your own decision. I would never dream of telling you what to do. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Janet. Anybody has a question for Ward Councillor? No. Peter Rush.
Councillor Rush.
Yeah, on the grounds that I've just heard from the developer, planning and Janet, I would propose this as a considered development.
Okay. Anybody second that?
I'll second it.
It's been proposed by Peter Rush, second by Phil Burke. Did you want to say something, John Taylor?
Yeah, I presume before we get around to voting on this, we'd have the opportunity to discuss it.
Why? Yeah, that's what. Yeah, it's open. If you want to comment, you can do. Yeah. Go. What do you want to say, John Taylor?
Please. Thanks, Chair. My thoughts on this. It's in Lisselborough. It's where I come from. I know the area very well. I appreciate it is on Greenbelt, but my views are fairly clear on this one. It's a site of historic importance. It's something that could and should be brought up to date and put into use. Although it's Greenbelt, it doesn't affect the open space around. It is all contained within the site itself. The only bit that's missing there is the feasibility study. It would have been nice to actually know how many we needed, and it may well be the 6. I'm quite prepared to accept that. The only downside I've got is it's the constant drip, drip, drip of extra traffic on the road, etc. And it is difficult in Littleborough moving around as it is. I think that needs pointing out. But on balance, I will support this application, and I would have either proposed or seconded it if that hadn't been done. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Got Sean Neal, and then Phil Burke want to say something.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I support this application too. It's a bit of a win-win, this really. Given the significance of this building, I don't know, it hasn't been mentioned, but there's big links to the Bronte sisters and all the documents, and there might be something hidden away in one of those attics somewhere, you know. So they might know something that we don't know, but I think that needs to be you know, commented on, that those links are there. I know it was a retired person's home setting before, that really didn't give it much justice with some of the outlying buildings, but so the footprint has been there for those new buildings. So again, yeah, a win-win situation.
Thank you, Sean. Did you want to comment, Phil Burke?
Yeah, just backing up what everyone's said, really. This is a golden opportunity to save a building and a piece of history. And we've heard a very good presentation tonight by the planning officer. We've heard from the ward councillor, and we've heard from the residents as well, the full support, which is very rare that we get at planning, where we've got full support from local residents in wanting to develop and save this building. So yeah, I fully support Peter Rush's move and second the proposal once we come to it.
Thank you, Phil Burke. So it's been proposed by Peter Rush and second by Phil Burke. Peter, can you take the votes?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Burke?
In favour.
Councillor Susan Emmett,
For.
Councillor Davidson,
For.
Councillor Massey,
For.
Councillor Rana,
For.
Councillor Rashid,
For.
Councillor Rush,
For.
Councillor Taylor,
For.
Councillor Winkler,
For.
Councillor O'Neill,
For.
Councillor Zaman,
For.
and Councillor Ahmed.
Abstain.
Right, that's carried.
Thank
Chair.
you. Thank you very much. Next item is on planning appeals, page 40 to 43. I hope all the members have read that, and anybody has any question over it? No? Before we end the meeting, I'd like to thank Emma Heron for being our supporting management this committee last, is it 18 months, Emma, or is it 12 months?
Just over a year, 13 months, I think.
Right. Yeah, thank you for that. And hopefully next meeting we will have Daniel back. I think she was here. Are you still here, Daniel?
I am here, yes. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. You want to say anything?
No, just it's nice to see you all, even though it's virtually.
Are you hiding from us? We can't see you on the camera, though.
I am, yeah.
Right. So I think once again I thank Emma for being excellent officer, being helping us some situations. Especially we had a very difficult on the Zoom to manage as this committee. So for all your support, and once again this is the end of the meeting. And thanks very much everybody for attending. Hopefully we will see you on 4th of February next meeting.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
a good meeting, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye. Good night.
Good night, everybody. Thank
All
you.
the best for Christmas.